Now that's it for this module. It was a huge module packed with content. You learned all the key basics about HTML and also all the core fundamentals you need to know about CSS. I will say that there is more to learn. There are more fundamentals you need to know, more features and aspects of CSS and HTML that you need to know as a web developer. But that's why the course isn't done yet. But we got a very solid foundation now, and you learned how a HTML document skeleton should look like. You learned about different HTML elements, visible elements and meta elements, and the different sections for those elements in your skeleton. You learned that HTML elements are there to add extra meaning to your content. That you don't use them for styling reasons, but instead so that search engines, computers in general, screen readers, and so on can pick up the meaning of your content and can therefore present and parse your content correctly. You learned that you can describe basically any type of content and that there are more HTML elements than the ones we used up to this point. Of course, we'll see more and different elements throughout this course, in the next course section already, actually. But the heading, the paragraph, links, and also images, these are all key elements which you'll need all the time. Now you also learned how to style your content then with CSS. That you can add inline styles with the style attribute, but that doing this has certain disadvantages, and therefore instead typically you use global styles. Either with the style element in the head section, or even better, in a separate CSS file. There you then can target elements by their tag name, or with pseudo selectors, or even with an ID. These are the different types of selectors you learned about in this section. And you can then target different properties of these elements with different supported CSS properties, like the color, the font weight, font size, border radius, and much more, to then set certain values for those properties. And the values you can set depend on the property you're setting. For example, for the color, you can set the color as such a RGB value, or as you also learned, as a hex or a HSL value, whatever you prefer. These are different ways of expressing a color. You learned that most HTML elements do have some content between the opening and closing tag, but that there also are some void elements like image or link. And you did learn about HTML element attributes like source or alt, which allow you to configure these elements. And some elements, like the link, but also the image, need that configuration to do anything useful at all. A link without a destination set wouldn't be any useful. And these are the core basics and fundamentals you'll learn about in this course section. If anything is unclear at this point, I absolutely do encourage you to go through this section again or through selected lectures of this section and also practice what you learned, because the foundation you got in this section will be important for the rest of the course as well. And of course, we're going to build up on this foundation in the next course section already.